Well, looky. You never know who's going to call into the program. Joining us right now, candidate for Texas 19, Glen Robertson. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Chad, I'm good. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. By the way, congratulations. Last night was your final council meeting, so now you get to completely concentrate on the Texas 19 race. And I guess for you right now, the big concentration is this back and forth between you and your opponent, Jodey Arrington, on some different issues, correct?
You know it is, and I really wish that both of us would get away from that, but it has degenerated into politics as usual, attack and counterattack. And my hope is from now until the 24th that, both campaigns will ratchet that down, and let's talk about the issues, and more importantly, let's start talking about solutions to the issues.
Well, I want to ask you about something you posted last night. Of course, we had Jodey Arrington. He called into this show yesterday to refute claims that your campaign has made, that he would embrace amnesty, that while he was at Texas Tech, that he was responsible for an increase, or while he was at Texas Tech, there was an increase in the amount of illegal immigrant students who were accepted at Texas Tech. He says that he is against in-state tuition. And then he went after you on some things, and you posted on Facebook yesterday, or your campaign did, that there is a, quote, clear pattern of deceit and lawlessness from Jodey Arrington. I'll let you explain.
Well, I will. He called into your show yesterday and made claims that I voted for the funding of $53 million for the Omni building, which is not true. He also said I voted for purchasing the Omni building, which is not true. He also indicated that I voted to issue the bonds to pay for the remodeling of the Omni building, and I was the sole vote against that. So, I think it's just time that, we get facts out, and if you're going to make allegations, you need the documentation to back it up. And Jodey's done several things, not only during this campaign, but back when he was running for state senate against Charles Perry. I would prefer not to put that information out there, but when you're hit, and you're hit with very malicious, dishonest ads, and you've got a super PAC out of Ohio attacking you with bad information, felt like we had to at least, try to set the record straight. It is my intention to move forward and talk about the issues, talk about the differences of opinions that Jodey and I have on Social Security, the Veterans Administration, and a few other issues where we do differ quite a bit.
What do you mean by pattern of lawlessness?
Well, he in the campaign, he sent out an email where he represented himself as a sitting congressman, invited people to come to a meet and greet and meet Congressman Arrington. That's a violation of federal law. He also has done numerous other things. He talked about in the campaign against Charles Perry that he was never part of the group that supported the 12% local sales tax hike. And said that on your show, and then 10 days later at a forum, changed his story and said he was proud to be a part of that group that was lobbying for it. And it's really not an issue of whether the 12% sales tax hike was necessary or not. It's saying one thing and then being caught and having to come back. It just seems to be a pattern over and over of not acting in the manner of which he speaks. Now, here again, we put that out yesterday to refute claims that they have made. I am ready to move on, and let's start talking about the issues again. We've got about 11 days left in this campaign, and I think the voters deserve to hear us talking about issues, our backgrounds, and substantiated with factual information.
Well, let me ask you about one of the issues that was brought up in the debate here on KFYO, and also the debate over at KCBD with the Chamber, and the debate over at Texas Tech that aired here on KFYO, and that is the issue of illegal immigrant students over at Texas Tech.
Yes.
Yesterday, he said he does not support in-state tuition. I've heard from a lot of people who don't quite understand where you're going with this argument, because it's the state legislature that approved of this law. It wasn't Texas Tech that went in and approved of illegal immigrant students. He says that he's against in-state tuition for illegal immigrants. Does that satisfy, in your mind, the questions that you and the campaign have raised?
Well, it kind of does, but you have to understand that Jodey, for about 8 months now, has been claiming to be responsible for increasing the number of students at Tech by over 10%. And you do that by recruiting. And what I never saw out of Jodey was him lobbying the legislature, him down in Austin when they were discussing this bills under his tenure at Tech, arguing the fact that by allowing illegal immigrants to have in-state tuition, you're forcing American citizens to subsidize it. Now, Mr. Arrington says that he's against that and he's opposed it. I'm ready to move on, and we'll discuss other issues.
All right. Well, the first issue that I'm going to ask you about before we let you go, President Obama, you probably heard me talking about it a little bit while you were on hold. President Obama will be signing an executive order today telling all schools that accept federal funding that they must allow transgender children, or I guess really all children, depending on how some of these rules are written, all children to let them use the bathroom of their choice, I assume the locker rooms of their choice as well. This is at all school campuses around the U.S. that take federal funds. If you were a congressman, how would you be reacting to this?
You've got to stand up and stop this, what I believe is illegal executive action. Congress has got to return to doing this job. And, the sad news is Washington's broken and Congress has failed. They've failed to stand up to Obama for 7.5 years now. They've failed to repeal and replace Obamacare. They've failed to secure our borders. They've failed to, reform the tax code. So I think it's going to take very strong leadership that has the courage and the backbone to try to rally the troops, get the leadership on board and stand up to this action. I think we've got to make a very firm stand because we cannot allow the president to penalize schools with federal funding because he believes that children ought to be able to enter the restroom of their choice. I just disagree completely.
Is this an opportunity for schools out there to break away? And you were on a school board. You were on 2 school boards. Is there any way, or is this an opportunity for schools to go, okay, fine, we don't need your money? And is any school district likely to do that?
Well, I don't think so because the system is set up wrong and we've got too much federal funding. That needs to go back to the state level and primarily to the local level. And we've got to get it back where states make these decisions. And more importantly, local school districts make these decisions. And so any funding that comes out of the federal government should be in the form of block grants to the states. That the federal government has no say-so on how we teach our kids. We need to do away with Common Core. We also need to do away with these threats that if you don't allow these children to enter the restroom of their choice, we're going to pull your funding. So we've got to drive this back to the local level and primarily to the states.
If, let's say you're in Congress right now, and LISD called you up and said, Congressman, we don't want to comply with this. What should we do? What would be the advice you would give to them?
I think your representative's job is not just to be in Congress and vote correctly, but it's to get back in the district and get with all the various school boards and the various school superintendents and rally the troops. Get an email campaign going. Get people on the phone with a pre-written script with all of the phone numbers of the swing votes, all of the people that are going to have influence on whether or not we can overturn this rogue president. So it's not just going to D.C. and knowing that, you've got to vote against something like this. But you got to be willing to get back to the district and pull people together, build coalitions, and really let the voices of these local school districts be heard. Would
it be advisable for a school district, for Lubbock ISD, Lubbock Cooper, whoever it may be, to stand up and say no to the president's executive order?
It depends entirely on their budget. If they have the funds to be able to say no, then yes, they should. The problem is we're dealing with education, and so it's going to be a tough decision for these school boards. Do we stand up to this president who is passing executive orders that we disagree with and risk our funding, which will keep us from operating our schools in a safe and effective manner? The problem is not with having school districts having the courage to stand up. It's with elected officials in Washington not having the courage to stand up so that we don't put these school districts in that tough situation.
We're visiting with Glen Robertson, candidate for Texas 19. You mentioned, as we started, this will be my last question for you, but you started off talking about one of the two areas, and then there are a couple areas where you and Jodey Arrington disagree, and one of those was the VA, correct?
Correct.
What is the disagreement between you and Jodey on that?
Jodey wants to go to more a privatized system, shuttering clinics and hospitals and putting veterans more in what they call the choice program. I think I have some issues with that, and the DAV has issues with that as well, in that afraid it would drive down the quality of health care to move veterans out of the VA system and now into Obamacare, which is a dismal failure, and to force them to go to doctors that don't have the expertise of working with the unique needs of our veterans. We've got to remember that these men and women have risked their lives. They come back, if they're lucky enough to come back, they come back maimed or injured. We're fighting severe battles with PTSD. The highest rate of suicide in the United States today is now Vietnam veterans. So I think we owe these men and women a quality health care system, and I would be for propping the military back up, refunding the military, which includes refunding the Veterans Administration, cutting out the layers of bureaucracy at the top that are creating all the problems. And let's make sure these veterans get the health care, the integrated and holistic health care they deserve.
Glen Robertson, candidate for Texas 19. Appreciate you calling in this morning and giving, of course, your side of the story to the phone call we got yesterday, and then also getting into the I guess we can still consider it breaking news, the executive order from President Obama. Appreciate your time, sir. We'll visit with you down the road.
Thanks, Chad.
Have a good one. That's Glen Robertson, candidate for Texas 19, calling into the show today.